Hello guys and welcome to Mind the Experience, and today I have the pleasure of welcoming a long time friend and a brilliant mind in the design world. Now his name is Abdalla Emam. Now hopefully I've got that pronunciation correct because he's a very unique and brilliant individual. And Abdalla, he's not only an accomplished design leader starting off in UX and product design, but he's also an entrepreneur, an author with a wealth of experience from the tech giants such as Apple and Google, and he's the founder of Indy Pixels Ventures and the author of the design container. So I could not be happier when I say this. Abdalla, welcome. It's great to have you here, my friend.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the introduction. You made me more smarter than I am.
I don't know about that, my friend. With what you've got to share with us today, I'm so looking forward to not only what I'm going to learn, but for everyone else who's watching this and who will watch all the various different clips as we release them over the next few weeks, what they will glean from this conversation. So we're going to start with your career because you've had a remarkable career. And it's taken you through some of the biggest names in tech, as I mentioned, right? So Apple and Google. But what initially drew you to the world of design?
That's a really good question. I think as I would say like a young immigrant to the U.S., I came in to study and also to kind of find my way. And was just drawn into UX design because I have done like web design in the past and dabbled with like coding and building websites. But then when I learned about UX more and how it does focus more on psychology, how the user can love the product and use the product and the flow of it. Also, it had a lot of like rules and background from industrial design, as well as a lot of frameworks that bringing from architecture, as I used to love architecture as well. I was drawn to building usable good things, also making a good impact with design and UX design. And then I did transition into UX design from web design. And as you mentioned, like I was also lucky enough to work on big project and project for companies such as Apple and Google along the way, and related to machine learning and big data. But I did kind of focus as I along the way too in SaaS and enterprise product, because I was drawn to using data to make decisions, and how that can make a great impact on design or an experience. I do like myself calling it an experience design because I know like there's all of these names that we've been using and going back to a product, but at the end of the day, we all designing experiences, whether it's a product or a digital product or an experience in a store. That's an experience, and I like to kind of use that term because for me that's what we do. It happened that it's in a mobile device, or it happened that it's on a desktop, but at the end of the day we should be focused more on designing the experience, and that's kind of one of the main things I would say that draw me into that career in the beginning, of course.
Wow, I love that concept as well, and that thought that you have, because design is everywhere. So, and the more we think about it as designers as being all around us, it helps us or enables us to start thinking about how we can start to look at how we experience things differently, whether that would be the physical space, as you mentioned, or the digital space. That's outstanding, mate. That's awesome. So, we've mentioned already that you worked at Apple. And you mentioned it as well. Now, it's a company that's renowned for its design-centric philosophy, right? So, and we see that publicly, even by the person who has the untrained eye. So, how did your time there shape your perspective on design, and more importantly, I guess it's a two-part question, on leadership in a creative environment?
I think that's really good question, and I would give like a shout out to Google as well, because I feel like these are the two companies that I have experienced like a good design process and good understanding of what design can bring to the table, and designing experiences. But yeah, like both of them, I would say there's a good sense of understanding of what design can bring. There's an openness of adapting to the user-centered design. I think Apple is specifically one of the, like you said, renowned for that, and they had the term, or coined the term, UX engineers, and again, and it started from an engineering perspective. So it was really good to be in that environment, and also to feel, I would say, valued. And there's also, even from both sides, product management and engineering, there's a good understanding of like what could be done if we focused on designing a good experience, and that was instilled from of course the founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, because he has like a lot of quotes out there. Like I think all of the designers probably watching know them. So it was, I would say it was really I was appreciative of that. But however, I would also say it was one of the most intense working environment as well, because they did have a lot of demands, as well as the good demands. Like you're designing experiences, but in the same time, you have to deliver it in a specific way. There's a lot of rules and outlines of what needs to be delivered, and how it should. And that again comes from the fact that they're really caring about all aspects of design, from visual design to experience design, interaction design, and of course industrial design. And they build their own product as well. So I think the experience was very positive. I would say it was intense, but at the same time, it kind of shaped. It showed me how good design could work, and how good design teams can work together with multidisciplinary team members, like other product managers and engineers. And it kind of like shaped also my understanding of designing an experience and thinking about the experience, rather than how the product will be used, where the environment they will be used, what they're going to be doing with, which devices they are using it for. So all that kind of like, I would say, instilled of the first year that I was specifically transitioned or moved from New York to San Francisco, and then worked on such big companies. So yeah, it was a pleasure. It was like a good time to be there. As I remember, I was just observing and learning more than actually designing things at the time in both companies. But it was just great to be there, and I think it shaped a lot of like my understanding of UX design later on, and also understanding of leadership and how important designing experience is, and thinking about that. And also the one thing I would say that just came to mind as well is like how also UX is not just owned by designers. And I think that one of the default of new designers coming, or new UX and product designers coming to the market, thinking that they own the experience, and that's not necessarily true. Like the experience is owned by the team together with their product managers or engineering. And that's what also one of the things that was a good thing that came out of my experience there, or working for such big companies, is there is a tendency of like having ownership of the experience together as a team, rather than just individual. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I mean, just the takeaway for me is just the fact that, you're designing without proverbial ceilings, without proverbial walls, but then understanding the collaborative ownership that should exist amongst a group of people who are creators, whether you're engineers or designers, but basically you're a holistic group. You're a group of people creating something, and that ownership, that's a huge takeaway for me. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that, mate. So many designers basically, they essentially dream of the path that you've taken, right? So, I mean, you've worked at Apple and Google, two really big time, design organizations, right, that are strong in design, that have led the industry in different ways when it comes to design as well. But you haven't just led design teams. You've now become an investor, a founder yourself as well. So what was it that motivated that transition for you? And in fact, let's just leave it there. I've got another question. I'll follow up with that after. What motivated that transition?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. I think, like as we all designers like have different like goals and journeys in life. I think what attracted me the most of the experience design and product design is actually creating and building things. And unfortunately, I got to a point in my career, like having led designs and project in major companies, as well becoming a manager and director later, and being a people manager. I got to a point in my life understanding that I actually do I do love and enjoy the hands-on process and the process of building and creating things, whether like as I mentioned, the experience could be a product or digital product, or could be something else. It could be even
Yeah.
building like a chair in your workshop. That's also I do enjoy that. And unfortunately, like I think with all honestly, at big companies, you rarely get that experience because you're working in a very small, I would say, part of the big, like a cog in a big wheel, or like a small wheel in a big cog, in a big machine. So you get to a point of like, well, I want to have a little bit more ownership of what I'm building. I have all these ideas that I want to bring into life, but I can because it doesn't really align with the teams I'm working with or the companies that I'm working with. So I think that's kind of what prompted me to like, well, I want to try and design and build something. And even when I did it at the time, or at least when I started, I did build a couple of like startups and product myself, and I was lucky enough to kind of one of them get lucky to sell them early on, and make profit of it, but just move on because, like I said, going back to like I just love building and creating things, not necessarily I want to build like a huge company or unicorn because that's not my thing. I just want to build like something that is really good to be used, and I don't mind also like either sell it or someone else taking it over and or like absorbed by like a bigger company. But I was lucky enough to actually being able to do that. Went back to school and got my master's in innovation, specifically design thinking and innovation. And that also kind of got me into the mindset of like creating things and building things, even in my master degree at the time. And my first like product or startup was actually one of my school project out of my master degree, that kind of started to build and develop the idea, and was able to use the design process of UX process of just building a prototype, and even go out and get some user feedback with just a Figma prototype or like a design. I believe it was a sketch at the time. It wasn't Figma, it wasn't popular yet. But I did use the design and design thinking and user-centered design and the design process to kind of apply it into this startup world of like, what if I build something and instead of building it from big companies and just waiting on my stakeholders' reviews, I'm actually building something and going out there and getting feedback just on the idea, and then take it from there, giving feedback just on a prototype that I built with Sketch or InVision at the time, or the second company that we built, it was on Figma. And I remember at the time, I get some VC meetings with just the Figma prototype, like we haven't really built anything yet.
Wow.
I also had, I was lucky enough to have like some developer friends and engineer friends from my times, of my past jobs that I was kind of lean on, and we kind of build like a prototype after that together, and we built the first version of the product, and were able to get some interest and some other. You usually have an NDA, so I can't really speak of details, but like some other like bigger companies either absorb your product, or so that's route also I wasn't aware of until I just took the plunge and just jumped and like, okay, I will try to do that, and like, oh, there's actually also another route rather than of course, like you want to build something to last like forever, but at the same time, like I didn't realize that, oh, you can actually build things that if it works and there's a need for it, like you're able to sell it or have it like absorbed by a bigger already established company, and just take it from there, and you can. So I kind of got the bug, I would say, after that experience, and just showed me like, oh, I can actually do this, and all the experience design, I would say, processes that I've had in the past helped me along the way. I would say the only difference is also, as you're like a small team, of course, like not a bigger company, like you're able to make decisions, you're able to move fast, and I think that was one of the main things also that helped me is an understanding of like the design process does not need to be long. Does not need to have like a one small deliverable like for just one quarter. For but you can actually do more by just there's a term now that's used all the time, build in public. I find it that we always designed in public in the past, but now just startup word are using it more, which is basically what we've been calling for years is just get user feedback, get potential user feedback. I was also lucky enough that my experience was focused on enterprise tools, SaaS product, and development engineering tools. So actually, a lot of the users that I was looking for, either I knew myself or like I can reach out and just bring them in to get feedback. So going through this like processes and building my own things simply got me the courage of like, oh, I do enjoy that and I want to do more of that. And even if when I at the time we were talking before this recording, going back to leading product design teams and leading design project is not, as I would say, as satisfying as and I tried that route as well, and I still consult and advise and specifically on design strategy with large 500 companies, also, and also startups and mid-sized companies, and I do enjoy that part, but it's never the same as like building something that you feel have a little bit more ownership of. You're building it from scratch, from zero to one, and getting user being happy with it and being able to put it out there, whether in the market or getting it sold or just keeping it and building it. And again, it's not easy. I would say the transition never been easy. It's like it always like up and down. Like you have to figure out how to during the build and stuff. You have to figure out how to support yourself and support your family. But for me, it was rewarding, and doing it made me realize that's something I wanna focus on and even get to where I am today, building the venture firm and the venture studio and a small team of also again friends that I worked with in the past, to get together and also build our own ideas, but most importantly support others, whether it's financially or if advising or consulting, but also hopefully we're at the moment raising a fund, our tech fund for $10 million to invest in startup ideas of SaaS and enterprise tool, with preferably from founders who has a design background, but not necessarily if you're also building something that is meaningful and impact and we're interested in it, or you're interested also in us to partner with. We're happy to partner with you and support you out there in your journey, whether with investment or non-investment, advising, consulting, connecting you. So there's a lot of ways that we can also help the people out there.
So that creates a unique perspective, and that's exactly what I was about to say. And when you mentioned venture capital world and so forth, I'm really interested in understanding from your perspective, what kind of view do you bring to the venture capital world, given your excellent background in design?
Yeah, that's it's a good question. I do believe like as myself going through the whole of building company and building a startup and designing and building a product, there was always this challenge I faced that I'm not from an engineering background or from a business background. So every time I had the privilege, of course, and a pleasure to speak to VCs, there always this kind of like, and I think at the time, I mean, that was like, I'd say it's not that far, probably like 8 years ago or 5 years ago. So there was still, at the time, there was really no VCs that really support people who from a design background or non-traditionally supporting, I would say, like outside of like the engineering or developers and the business side. And the other thing also, like I kind of noticed that going through that, Well, that's not true. There was one the design fund. There's one fund or a VC in the VC world, the support designers. They are in San Francisco. They actually do a lot of great job. Like highly recommend them if you want to check them out.
Yeah.
So they've been doing also for like a while. But that was the only I would say like either VC firm or like a funding outlet that I've seen when I was like trying to get funding or building my product that is focused on design. With that being said, I like your question too because I feel there's also something missing
Yeah.
when not investing in design from the beginning, especially like you see it in big companies and big teams. As of today, if you're not, of course, like I have. I had the pleasure to work at Google, Apple, and there was like a good understanding of design. But other companies, for example, that I worked at, and like most of my time I spend, especially as a leader or a director or whatever, in a design leadership role, you spend most of your time educating of like what UX design can be, what experience design can bring, what should we be doing. But at the end of the day, also having built my own thing and being in that world, I also understand from a business perspective, like, well, you're asking me to do a very long process that is not guaranteed without building anything to show for or to put in front of users. So I kind of understood more that perspective as well, but I also understood that there's a challenge there, and how can we maybe from the get go establish this understanding of like what is experience design, what is design thinking, and how can help that instill it from the perspective from the beginning. So what we're bringing, I would say, in the table, we're using, of course, the framework that I put together, the design container with the startup that we're working with. But also, we always encourage, like one of the first thing that I always share with the startup that I'm working with, or like the ideas or the founder that I'm talking to, is like think about hiring a designer first. Like your founding team should have at least one designer,
Yeah.
because that will make a difference, and that will. It's not only about really good UI, but it's actually going to instill a lot of in your DNA in the startup or the company. What is what design can bring to the table? Like how can we design help you with research? How can design help you with putting something together really quick to get user feedback without even start building or doing the code. Especially now also with AI, there's a lot of like tools out there too, like now even building a functional app for yourself with prompts. So it's good to see that too. Like, and I do see that as a good thing, because you have to go back to always to the design craft,
Yeah.
and that's not gonna go away. If you know your design craft and your design chops, like at least the understanding of like how to write a good prompt should be easy for you, because you'll know what you are asking the AI tool to do. So having that mentality of a mindset of like having design and design thinking as part of your startup DNA, I think it's really important. And I hope that that's what we also bring into the table of like with the startup that we support and invest in, is like, not only educating them, but like walk with them, and also work with them and partner with them
Yeah.
to have a good, successful incorporation and implementation of design processes early on.
Yeah.
With that being said, like as I mentioned earlier, but the design container also helps you to have a different perspective from a design background. Like it is a framework that even could be used in big companies, because that's another, the challenge is the opposite of big companies. There's all these processes, and things tend to take very long time without any feedback specifically from the user, and I hate to say that, but also we always like blame, like we need to educate more about UX design. We more expert design, but at the end of the day, it's also like a challenge we need to take on as designers and design teams. We need to understand also the problem that still businesses or higher up don't or executives don't really see the value of design. It's on us.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
what we need to show the balance of like how can we implement a design process but at the same time also go back to the roots of like what we're doing this. We're doing this to build product, to test with the user. So it makes no sense also to take month of research and month of developing or designing a mock-up that not necessarily guarantee, because there's no user feedback that happen along the way at all. And now with AI tools that also make this process really fast. So I see now teams going behind, especially design and product teams,
Yeah.
falling behind with engineers, because the engineers can just easily just go use an AI tool and it will get them very decent, I would say. It's not perfect, of course, but it's a decent mock-up or a decent code that they can use and implement. So,
Wow.
so
Right. Yeah.
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 So that's also yeah. So hopefully I'm making sense, but
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
so I kind of felt like the challenge of like, one, we would like to help startup understanding how can they implement design process and design thinking early on in their processing and work with them on that. And then the second thing also, we want to support people and designers from a product design background to create and build more things and be a design founder, or like what we call a design founder from a design background. We need more of founders from a design background because we have a good understanding of experience design and user experience design. And that's what we're also looking for. And not necessarily from a design background, but someone who will be leaving in that with us. As well as non-traditionally from a background of building traditional products like in the past. There's also a lot of good ideas out there from people like you and I who are professionals, but not necessarily very like technically or code-wise very savvy. So how can we help those as well to kind of bring their ideas and take them on the process of building their first MVP and getting how to get the market fit, how to think about the market fit, like, and all that. It's terms used in startup and by VCs, but it always goes back to design, because how you get market fit is how you put out your designs and get user feedback as early as possible and pivot as you go, which is basically the design process and the experience design process that we've been doing for years.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you are welcoming investors or collaborators or partners that are not necessarily from the design leadership, sphere as well, because then you're getting the best of all these different perspectives, like you mentioned. That's outstanding. But that's the perfect segue actually into something that I'm really excited about to hear when you told me, and this is about your book called The Design Container. So, what was the core problem that you saw in SaaS and Enterprise UX, that space that prompted you to write? See, I'm assuming that's what prompted you to write, and if not, I'm sure you're going to correct me.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, you're spot on. I think the very first, like the two challenges that I mentioned before, I think these are the main one that got me to write this book, which is you rarely see any design process in a startup, especially if they don't have a design or excuse me, someone from a design background in the founding team. But on the other hand, the big corporations and big tech, if you want to call them, they also have the opposite problem. I would say they tried so hard to understand UX design and hire designers, but the environment of a corporate and a big business, I would say, I don't think is a good or a friendly to design thinking and innovation. And I think that kind of create this friction between how can we innovate, how can we do new things, how we can basically be rebels and break things, but we can't do that because also there's all these business constraints, there's all these users, so it's understandably so. A lot of our UX processes then tended to get too long
Yeah.
in creating in creating, which I think is important, deliverable, but the end goal, like it's not clear where the end goal is. And and I don't want to generalize, not all the teams do that, but there's a lot of teams out there that I've seen, for example, creating a lot of good deliverable that I believe in, personas, journey maps, service blueprints, but not necessarily tying it down to an end not
Yeah.
mock-up, but an end product goal of like how this will translate into enhancing or improving the product. So, and I think I found that like the challenge from both sides, and it comes from also like the team dynamics. So the design container, simply to talk a little bit about what the book is, it just a framework. I don't think it changes a lot of what we have, but I feel it's more summarized, a blueprint, you would say, of designing something and redesigning something or building something that is meaningful in a short amount of time, or shorter, not short, but shorter than like quarters, of course. But the main thing also that kind of bring to the table is how you should, as a startup founder or like a business leader in a corporate company, is start thinking about how you're putting your teams together. So the main idea of design container is creating this what you call design container. In this container, you bring in a team that's multidisciplinary, engineer, of course, designer, product manager, but also plus that someone who can represent the user, be a part of that team, whether from sales, marketing, customer service. If you cannot get the user themselves, if you're a startup and you have availability for the users, not that you're gonna hire a user to be in your team, but someone who can be a part of this group. And the idea is to have this team decide their own processes, the tools that they are using. A lot of issues that comes up also in, especially I would say, in big tech companies, that the tools are technically, this is the tools that we're using and we cannot use anything else, and it takes probably months to get any tool to be approved to be used as a team.
Wow.
Another thing also, like we have and if you're like me who dislike a little bit the scrum process, you will enjoy one of the chapter in my book, because I basically just talk smack about Scrum processes. The idea of building a very small incremental, which I think there's a good value to it. I think it was taken to extreme, especially in big tech, and dividing of what you're going to be building as a team or as an individual becomes very small, that you don't really have no idea about the big picture. And I think that's what design can help with. What is the big picture?
Mm.
And kind of build to it and for it. And including in the design container, including about the tool that you're using as well. Not only that, but the tools that you're using as processes. You need to, as a team, talk about what is your, like, if what are the steps that you're going to go through. And that's the thing also that I kind of find it hard, as someone who's been in product design and UX design for and tech in general. Our process is getting longer and longer. We have now more circles to add and more steps to be added. It started with just a few steps, or started with an old derivative, I would say, in my opinion, of the user-centered design. But we had to add more details, because the stakeholders that we're dealing with, they wanted more details of like, how are you going to do this, and then we end up having all this elaborate process that have, in theory, works from A to Z, but the design process or building a product, it's never A to Z. It's never like a linear 1, 2, 3 thing. So how can you like decide on, well, if we're going to prototype, what is the goal of the design container, or the team basically in the design container? How are we going to design thing? Who is going to be involved? If we want to focus on specific features, what are we developing? How can we prototype something that we get in front of the user? So all that I do talk a little bit about in the book, but it kind of break it down of 3 main, I would say, stages. So the design process becomes only 3 steps, or main steps: explore, define, and then evaluate. And beneath that, you can use any other tools from other processes. Like you can still use the user-centered design. You still use some design thinking methodologies. But at the end of the day, like, these 3 things is what you should be aspiring to in every project you're working on. And it doesn't need to be month. It could be these steps could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a 3 month if you're like redesigning a really big, I would say like platform. So it depends on what it is. Like the time frame of it, it's really depends on what you're working on. But so basically, that's I hope I did it justice, but that's what's in the book.
I actually want you to repeat those three steps for our listeners because that is outstanding. Because that answers a couple of the other questions that I had in mind about like key principles. So, what were those three steps? Could you just repeat that for us?
Sure. It's the first step is explore. So this is the stage when you do whatever you need to do to explore and research. You can do research to user. You can do different type of research, of course, like interviews with user. You can do card sorting if you're looking for information architecture, like feedback, like whatever it needs to be done in the explore. You basically combine a little bit of research but also exploring ideas. This is where you do like a blue sky workshops, like let's get together and sketch what that could be. And from there, you should have enough, even if you're like a startup or if you're a big company, you should have enough to get you to the next stage. Start defining your problem as well as idea of what the solution could be. And that's when comes more of the designing mock-ups could be, even building a prototype or start thinking about how to build it, whether in Figma or whether we're partnering with the engineer and actually build a prototype. So that falls under the second one, which is define. And then the last one is evaluate, which is the one important phase that most teams don't do a good job at. And personally, as well, I have not done a good job at it in the past, is evaluate your concept or ideas. As I mentioned, you will have now mockups or a prototype or even partnering with engineering to prototype some of the things and build things workable. So the last stage is how can you get that in front of users, customers, get feedback, of course, stakeholders if you're a big company, and get enough feedback to either like finalize your designs or features or things to push out, or of course you go back to like either explore or define if you need to tweak more. But if you think about it, like most design processes fall under these three stages. It just, we added a lot of like, I don't want to say fluff, but like a lot of like steps to kind of explain.
It's true though.
Yeah. So this is basically it. Like I do use the same framework with the ideas we're building right now, and also the startups we're working with. And I kind of instilled it in as well in a lot of companies that I consult for. Big companies, as I mentioned, and I'm in the process of evaluating this this framework. I'm trying to get as much as I can, either feedback or like how it works, and observe how it's working. And I'm hoping like at some point I want to do a second edition with more like real life examples and a little bit more explanation of how the framework could be used.
That's fantastic. I'm so looking forward to buying this book myself and getting my hands on a copy. That would be outstanding. Just those foundations that you've spoken about and so forth. I think that's going to help so many designers not just think about what they do in terms of whether that be small projects, but how they start up with investment projects or ideas and so forth, and how they can go from designer to investor to innovator and take a path that's similar to what you've done, or even aspire to do something like that as well. That's amazing. So shifting gears just a little bit. Now you recently gave a talk at the San Francisco Design Week about UX for AI. Now this is a hot topic right now, especially within the world of the design industry, and actually pretty much any other industry that has a digital or physical storefront, because they're now thinking about how they can install or integrate AI somehow into the customer experience, right? Now you mentioned in your talk that designing for AI-driven systems is fundamentally different. Now could you expand a little bit on what you meant by that?
Yeah, of course. Maybe let me give a little bit maybe background and
Yeah.
how do I get to to focus on AI. And as someone who worked with you at some point for ClickTick, so I started my career, as I mentioned, engineering tools and focus on data visualization, but also like data or big data in general. That kind of led me into one of the good dear project that I worked at Google, which is focuses on machine learning tools and machine learning for engineering at a time. So I was responsible for like redesigning and unifying. I would say I think it was about 7 tools they used at a time internally at Google to
Wow.
develop machine learning. Sorry, there's more machine learning models. At the time, we were using the term machine learning, but now mostly AI is mostly used. As well as at the time, it wasn't mainstream yet. Like it was actually like a very for designers, it wasn't like a fun thing to work on. It was very technical, and I actually had to learn a lot of things about like what AI and how it works. And I think there was like a good cake example of like the AI model and how it's built, and the model just have the ingredient and it just spits out different recipes of the cake, and the user involvement is becoming basically giving the feedback to make it better, and then it trains back to the model. So it was great time to actually dive into that. Without the pressure of like, oh, everyone's talking about AI. It wasn't like that at the time.
Yeah.
So I was actually glad. I'm grateful for the opportunity and the work I've done with the team there. I was working with the TensorFlow UX team, and then it became like a part of like a Google Core AI development team, I believe now.
Yeah.
But that kind of got me into thinking about machine learning and AI and what is applied. And it was actually applied in a lot of tools back then. It just we didn't know about it. Tools like, for example, I would say Airbnb and Uber at the time, they were doing or at least like they used machine learning model to kind of make sure that the licenses, for example, that's shared by the users when you share your license to become a driver,
Yeah.
that's a machine learning model that kind of went through the picture and made sure like is it like a fake or is it a good license?
Yeah.
Like no one was on the other side looking at the machine, looking at the license.
Yeah.
So it's been around for a while. But it became mainstream, of course, like lately with OpenAI and of course Google Vayu and many others, and it's a great time now to think about AI and of course to be involved in it. So that got me into thinking more about AI and how it works. From there, I kind of start to be more specialized. I would say a little bit about machine learning and AI or designing for it. So the talk was mainly about the venture studio and the venture firm that we have now, and how we work with our the startup that we work with and the main companies as well that we consult for, and how can you think about it differently from a design perspective. I think one of the a few things that it kind of stood out to us, like when we start working on AI ideas, is how agile the process how to be, and that's one of the main things, as I mentioned for the design container earlier, is thinking about the process. It cannot be linear anymore. I cannot just wait for wireframes and then from there I can do this. So how can you try to have a conversation and communicate of what you're trying to design and build and prototype early on, and how to be adapting to this new system as AI itself or machine learning as you're working with it is agile, and it's very adaptive, I would say, to what is need to be done. And another thing also, like we faced, like in the near future, is actually already happening with robotics. For example, you can be designing without interfaces. Like, how would you do that? If you cannot mock up UI and like other things. So it goes back to like you're designing an experience. It's just happened that is a mock-up, or it happened that could be like a robot you're talking to, or like a Google Assistant that you use your voice for. So that's also another thing that we had to basically think about from a perspective of the process. And another thing also, the dynamic behavior of the outcome. So how can you think from a end goal of your design to be more, have more options and be more probabilistic rather than before we used to design, like we need the user to click on that button and then go to the next view and do this. But with AI, you're facing also like, well, it doesn't have to be that way all the time, and it can spit out differently. But how can you start thinking about that? And the good thing about it, I would say, in my opinion, too, is giving the user more options of what could be done and leading them through it as you go. So in the talk, we talked about that. We talked about also a few principles that I think, as a venture firm and a studio that we've been using, and we try to.
If you share the principles, please share them.
Yeah. I'm sure there are more than these, but these are the one that we are kind of using right now.
Already that you can remember. I know I'll be lapping this up. So
Yeah. So one of the first thing is explainability. So that's we adapted this as a design principle for everything we build, because a lot of users, especially if they're not tech savvy, they need to understand how the AI came up with the answer, and that's also something we face, especially with the professional tools. I used an example, and I actually showed a good case study about a tool that was used by dermatologists early on in the whole machine learning and AI world. And the dermatologists and the physicians were hesitant to use it because they didn't understand how the machine learning model like predicted the disease. So one of the things that those companies did, I actually sorry, I forgot the company name. It's a hard name to say. But what they did is basically adding a heat map. So the pictures or the dermatology pictures of the skin or the diseased skin, they added a heat map feature that showed how the machine learning decided this area of the skin is diseased and this area is good. And that kind of visually, and that's something design did, it gave the physician and give the user like the trust of the tool, understanding more. So explainability is a good principle that we try to how much we can explain to the user without, of course, without like pushing it to them and taking them through a lot of steps to explain what it is. Another thing is control. Like we also saw a lot of challenges that faces people who build AI product at the moment. They think that they need the machine learning model or the AI model to do everything for the user, but not necessarily true. A lot of users and the feedback we've been getting is like, but I want to not also only understand or explain to me how it happened. I want to also be in control. So start thinking about basically you have or you must let the user guide the experience, have ability to correct or override. So these are really important to feel or give the user the feeling of control, but also help the user teaching the machine learning model AI, because as you give more feedback, in theory, the model you experience with the AI should get better over time. So that's also another good principle that we adapted. Another good one as well that I would say is one of the main thing is building trust, and trust is one of our new design principle that we use all the time or talk about all the time. Like how can we build confidence, and it kind of, as you see, it's related to the two that I mentioned before. You build confidence by explaining more and can give the user control, but over time you need to also focus on how can you get that trust from the user that it actually the tool is working well and it's not hallucinating or it's not doing things on its own as much. And if it is, how can they edit it again or correct it or give feedback on it? And then the next principle, as I mentioned, is feedback. Feedback and making sure that whatever your AI tool is, whatever outcome or deliverable you're giving to the user or coming out of the AI model, the user have the ability to give feedback on it, and also even if it's just a small thing as a thumbs down and thumbs up, like how the response was good or bad, that is still good information that you can get from the user, and also giving them the feeling again of control, as well as helping training the AI in the long term.
Yeah.
And the last one, agency. It's basically thinking about what we're building from how do we empower users, and not necessarily take over all the experience, or replacing human with AI. That's something also we talk about a lot. And even there is one good idea that we're building at the moment, or we're excited about, is actually building a project management tool or AI assistant, but that AI is able to actually be on calls with you and have a chat and a conversation.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about that, but we're also thinking about like how can we make sure that this is also not perceived to take, for example, jobs from human by just using the AI. So we're with that idea, we're targeting more the teams that they cannot afford to hire or and have the leverage to hire a project manager. Like as a small team or a startup, how can you get this program management, or specifically for UX and design teams? That's something also design teams, I would say everywhere I work, the lack of is project management. Some big companies, I was lucky to have, for example, some great program managers at Google and Apple, but not necessarily most of mid-sized companies or companies who are not UX mature enough wouldn't really have that role even.
Yeah.
And now it's moving around to different things, or moving away or shying away from it. So that tool also hopefully will help with that. But we were also thinking about it, how can we make sure in our messaging or how we build it is to more empower the users and the teams, rather than and co-pilot the experience along the way, rather than take over or taking jobs from human. So that's basically, to summarize, that's okay. I think we have explainability,
Yeah.
we have control, we have trust and feedback, as well as with an agency.
Wow, wow. And I love the way in which you talk about the challenges and the opportunities as well, especially the project management tool with how AI can be integrated into that. So, and that really kind of like lends to the thought of the rise of AI, right? So, are there any other opportunities that you see from your perspective? And your perspective is very unique, of course, because, you know, we're listening to a very successful story, right? And an account of what you've done and how you've been able to traverse through this journey called life and UX and design. So, are there any other opportunities that you see with the rise of AI, aside from project management tools and so forth, that could be something that, you know, as designers or as people who are just inquisitive, innovative, that we should be paying attention to?
I think it's a really good question, and I hate to give the cop out answer that is like it will change everything. It will. There's all these opportunities out there, but the good thing is, like as I mentioned, I think I will use one of the principles that I mentioned, like as a great opportunity, just giving agency to people from different background. For example, the development tool with AI now, it's great, and it's something that I probably don't need to talk about. But some tools like Lovable, Replit, like giving also a lot of people like us, for example, from a design background, who have some understand of coding and development, but not necessarily can call themselves a coder, of building their own ideas and MVPs, and even I've seen it used in even big companies now as a prototype, like tools.
Yeah.
So that's also an area that will change a lot, and I think it's a good thing, because it's becoming, or giving the people who probably not necessarily had the means before, like whether like, you know, financially, or even to build a development team, or like pay engineering team to build their ideas. So that's something it's happening already, and I think I'm excited about personally, because I think there's an opportunity there to at least get your ideas out there and build something that could be even getting users and getting paid customers and paid user for it, like without even having a huge like development team and engineering team,
Wow.
which is a good thing. And for what I mentioned earlier too as well, like that's I wish also more design founders comes out of that, because they are able to use their design skills to actually build something that is usable and have a good experience from the get-go. And then of course, but to scale, like I don't think there's there was still the route of like you have to get funding, you have to at some point to scale up. It will be still hard to just have a one person, but there is an example out there, I would say, like good example, that has started from a one founder or two founders using this sort of tools to build their So I think that's an opportunity out there that is already exists, and I think it's going to bring a lot of more entrepreneurship to the word. And I hope that also will be adapted by more designers and more folks from non-technical even background to start playing around and build their own MVPs and prototype to kind of get out there and get like user feedback and try to build their own things. So
Wow.
that's definitely, yeah, that's definitely something I'm excited about. I would say there's a lot of opportunities in automating a lot of engineering processes and
Yeah.
also design processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of helps us to think about the evolution of the designer, right? So, how do you see the role of the designer evolving now with this almost climatic shift of tools that are available to us? Now we're talking about, automation or semi-automation or semi-intelligent in some ways, right? AI. So,
Yeah.
how do you kind of like see the role evolving as a designer? It's not how it was when we began,
Yeah.
but what do
Yeah.
you see?
I'm, as I mentioned, maybe I'm a very optimistic, but I am excited about it because I remember, I think recently I saw one of your videos also, you were talking about like how UX is not tech. And I think that's something that I really resonate with. And one of the main things I would say that shifting or changing with now AI coming into the word that as designers, we're not just designing buttons and flows anymore.
Yeah,
We're designing decisions. And I
yeah,
think it's been like that. It just, we never kind of put our hands on it. But we are now going to be more focused on, and I believe UX design and design strategy is going to thrive more because now you're going to have to think about these things as you're designing because there's a lot of tools that can help you take
yeah,
care of the UI part of things or the mocking up things in a more faster way. But we're gonna have to shift our mindset that we're not designing buttons and flows anymore. We're designing decisions and how we are designing how the product themselves think, not necessarily how the user think while using them. So there is also another thing that we probably gonna have to have a shift mindset is that is we are that's why I always like to take out the user from the experience, user experience, because we're designing the experience, and that happened that it was a user experience for the longest time, but now it's still going to be a user human centered,
yeah,
but how you also design for the product logic and the AI logic and how the product make decision and their own and how
yeah,
you adapt to that as you're designing for. So I think that shift definitely it's a big thing and it will change the design role a little bit more. The good thing is our industry as designers, we changed our title many times in the past 20 years. So the good that shows how adaptive we are, and the next thing, of course, will be more. There's already I see roles are coming out of like AI designer role. There was already like voice designing for voice tools and products as well. Designing conversations that also will be a big thing, especially with the conversation you'll be having with AI tools and ChatGPTs and etc. To me, I mean, I don't think it's unfortunately we're still stuck in the designing for a chat experiences with AI, but I hope and I think I see that also changing more and more. And again, it goes back to the user-centered design. The more we're gonna get, there's all these tools that comes out, and especially when I'm talking to founders and startups, they are building another basically a replica of a chat GPT, but for whatever industry or idea that they
ah,
have.
okay, yeah,
And even big companies doing the same thing too, like, oh, what they're doing, we need to incorporate AI, and unfortunately, well, just let's have a chat, add chat box to the product and call it a day. So that hopefully will change soon. Like right now we're more focused on that, but at some
yeah,
point we're going to change, and I see product coming out already, something like UX Pilot, for example, no affiliation, but something started by a fellow a design, someone from a design background started UX Pilot. But what I like about UX Pilot, or using it as an example, because it use it's a design tool that basically create mockup with AI, but it's incorporated the AI tool
Yeah.
sorry, the AI into the process and the flow rather than getting you to jump into a chat box to
Yeah.
talk to the AI and going back and forth. That's something also we are working on in GemmaFlow, which is the app or the idea that I was explaining or talking about, the project management tool. How can we make it more seamless as you are using the software or the app? You're jumping from chat to a conversation with the AI assistant to back into like a design file. Like, how can we make that seamless instead of just forcing you to be in an experience of a chat and you cannot do it or group it, or even some of the even ChatGPT at the moment, I'm not sure if you can group your conversation or it's still kind of very general. So there's an opportunity out there. I don't think design is gonna go anywhere negative. I think it's gonna be more positive because at some point any technology comes out, there is this point of like understanding what technology is, and there's the time that the technology is still ugly. It's only used by a few people that only know how to use it.
Yeah.
But then there's a good trajectory once designers get their hand on the tools. It becomes more accessible, more better experience, more easy to use, and of course more lovable to use. And that's, I feel like we started to get there, like, because there's a better, more and more understanding of like how can we, AI is just a technology, how can we bring it into the experience rather than just completely build an experience just for the AI, and that shift is already happening. And I don't want to say it will settle down like the talk about AI, but again, it to me it's just a technology, a new technology that we use, and at some point it's gonna become like Google, for example. When it just came out, it was just a search, but they did it in a very different way, and everyone was talking about it. And there was articles like how to use Google search and how to build a search, meaningful search. So we're at this point now on how to create prompts and how to. But the more you use it, it's gonna be naturally, and the next generation will be more naturally to them. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but
It does. I've got way more than what I asked, which for me was fantastic, as well as for our audience as well. So thank you so much, mate. So, but this kind of like brings us to your current venture, not mine, but yours, and that's Indy Pixel Ventures. So, what's the driving mission behind this studio?
with all honesty, we just want to build things that we can be proud of. We partner with good founder that they are building something different with good impact. So I feel, as I mentioned earlier, like we saw this gap of like the design process is not implemented early on. What can we do better? As well as, of course, like funding for specifically non-traditionally founders in the past. That was also something that we want to rally behind. So we started for basically because of the love of building things and making things. And as a small team we have in the venture studio specifically, we are building the things that we think it matters and we were excited about. We did pivot at some point, like we started with the idea of building the MVPs or prototype themselves for the founders we're working with, but we again as we believe in our like pivoting, like we pivoted a little bit of focusing on supporting and consulting and advising the teams that either already exist, but at the same time like invest and build a venture fund to focus on funding the founders from again different backgrounds, but also building something that is meaningful, building something with impact, something we can align with. So we hope, like as a firm, I would say we are coming from the industry. We are all techies, so we know how it takes to build something and design something. Can also bring us or bring us from a different perspective rather than the typical VC money word that basically come from purely financial perspective and gains and metrics. As of course, we will have our own, especially with the companies we invest in, we can help them with our processes. We can help them with connection. We can help them with putting the word out there and how to build something that you can get user feedback, how to find market fit. But that's what we are basically trying to bring in differently, just as it is a venture firm and a studio built by designers and engineers as well. That was in the past build their own things or build or designed and build things for big companies.
So you're also in the process of like developing a new MVP that's focused on design flows and design ops, and you mentioned GemmaFlow as well. So that got me super excited because I've seen some of the videos that's already out on the social media platforms, as well as some of the announcements you've been able to give as well, and I've seen the excitement that's brought up as well. So I'm pretty sure our audience will want to find out a bit more about that too. So of course I'm going to be cheeky here. Is can you give us a sneak peek in terms of just a verbal on what that's about? What could we look forward to with GemmaFlow?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think the idea started from the need again of having this project management support specifically for design teams. Not a lot of design teams have the leverage of having their own. There is project management tools out there, I would say, that's mostly used by, for example, Jira and other things, but typically they are built just on focusing more, I would say, on the business and engineering side. And as designers, we all really hated working with them, and it always this friction of how can Figma integrate it to it, etc. So that kind of came. Yeah, yeah, I can see from your laughing your pain from it as well.
The nightmares are just resurfacing.
So I haven't, at least personally, I would say, I haven't seen a tool that is really focused on design teams and design process or the creative process in general. Something that it can start from, for example, building a template from user-centered design perspective, starting a project. But not only that, we also wanted to bring something new to the whole AI world. So we want to focus, as I mentioned, I think the chat aspect of it, of course, it's really important and we're building that. But how can we think of AI more as a team member that can join your team? How and we may not think of it as something like that we have available at the moment, or do we need that? But eventually I feel like this is kind of what we are hitting, like the conversation that we have with AI and more, and there is like voice element to it. So what we're working on is basically that, like an AI design project management assistant that is focused more on how the experience of it becoming more human-like. You're able to have Gemma or GemmaFlow added to your meeting, for example. Talk to her like I'm talking to you at the moment, taking notes in meetings, but not only that, giving user feedback, taking insights from the meeting you have and summarize it, spitting it out, of course, to you or the team, but also sharing it on Slack or the tool that the team is already using it. Summarizing Figma comments, for example, on one of the design project and taking that and transfer it into actionable updates that could be done. So a lot of these things as designers we all struggle with because we're creative people, we're focused on the visual, so we're really not good at taking notes, not good at summarizing comments. And of course there is a lot of good tools, but the friction of it, I would say, always like has been a challenge for design team. So we're hoping that what we're building can fix a lot of that, can give the user like a human-like experience. But also, as I mentioned, it will be a good important part of it is integration. Like, how can we integrate Gemma and GemmaFlow to be part of the tools that are already used by the design processes? So we'll have, we're working on Figma integration. We're working on already a project management tool that already exists out there, Notion. So some of these integrations, so it doesn't become like a new tool I have to use a part of all the other tools, but becoming part of the design tool, which is one of the biggest challenges that we're working on, and I'm excited about also what we're working on and how we can start more, share more about it. So yeah, if you want to learn about it more, like please visit GemmaFlow.com. You can sign up. You will get, of course, our newsletter and how we are going at it. We are designing it in public, so we would love the design community feedback on the videos I'm sharing, whether on LinkedIn or YouTube, about it. As well as once we have the beta or the demo that we can share publicly for people and users and designers to be able to sign up and actually use the tool, so we'll know about it if you signed up. So yeah, GemmaFlow.com, and we're happy to hear any feedback about any of what we're doing.
That's fantastic. And that brings us actually on to this really nice part of where we wrap up, because I know for a fact that our listeners will want to know where they can find you, where they can find your work. You've talked about GemmaFlow. So guys, make sure that you visit that and get a sneak peek and basically sign up so you can get the latest on that really great bit of innovation development by Abdalla Emam and his team. So your book is The Design Container, right? So where can they get a copy of that, first of all?
So it's on Amazon. The good thing, it was actually one of the bestsellers in the month that was released, which is a great thing, something I'm proud of. But you can find it if you just search for The Design Container Amazon. You'll be able to find it and buy it. I know there's also a copy, or like if you have an Audible as well, and a subscription with Amazon, you're able to download it, I believe, in your Amazon subscription as well for free with your subscription. To mention also earlier, if you want to learn about what we're doing at Indy Pixels, please go to indypixels.co. You'll learn a little bit about our venture studio model, like the framework that we're using, but also like the capital and how we plan to partner also with other VCs and other investors on supporting the startups and the product ideas that we're going to be working with. And to find me personally, you can also, of course, search Abdalla Emam on LinkedIn, and you'll find me, or any other social media, indypixels.co as well on Instagram. I'm only active probably on LinkedIn and Instagram the most. But yeah.
And of course, you have a YouTube channel as well, right? So, and I'm certainly someone who's always tuned in, watching what you produce and what you publish on your channel. So, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. So I started it talking about design processes and specifically design thinking. I create videos about design thinking and design strategy. Most recently also, we're going to have a little pivot to the channel as well, that we're more focused on designing for startups and basically doing interviews and promoting either the startups that we work with or just the design founders from already successful founders out there. So some interviews also we're planning to do soon and come out with. So we're in the process of pivoting the content, but we will always be talking, of course, that I'll be talking about design strategy as well as design thinking, because that's my background and I'm really passionate about it. It's if you search for Indy Pixels Abdalla Emam on YouTube, like, you'll found the channel. Please go subscribe and see what I have on the channel, like new good videos coming out soon. But I'm not really good at releasing videos constantly. That's what I was trying to be honest earlier.
Well, that's because successful people like yourself are busy doing so many other things. So I'm sure all of the subscribers that you have and the viewers that are viewing us and listeners, they're going to be looking forward to whatever it is that you release as well on YouTube. So that's fantastic. And of course, for startup founders and designers listening, especially about the startup aspect of what you're doing, of course, it's Indy Pixels Ventures. Make sure that you guys connect with Abdalla on that as well.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, that was a pleasure.
Yeah, and the pleasure actually is not just mine, but all of our listeners as well. So you've traversed through the ranks with the design in the design industry. You can definitely speak from experience. And my final question to you, Abdalla, is: are there any final words of advice for designers in this modern age of AI who are aspiring to be either successful in the world of design or even aspiring design leaders? Is there anything that you could share, whether that be a phrase or a nugget or anything?
Like a really good question. I would say maybe the one thing that I hope that they can come out of our conversation today, or at least my own non-traditional career in design, is just try things. Don't take your career or design processes are very rigid, very linear to these are the things that you have to do. And that's something I personally had to learn in life in general. Like it never, like no plan, nothing goes according to plan. Like you have to learn how to pivot and have to go with the flow a little bit, but also like how to listen to yourself and listen to your gut and what you want to do. So I would say like for designers, like go back to the design mentality of design and redesigning and building things and break things and learn from it and try different things and don't basically just be rigid of your perspective of your career, of your design process. The design process, I would say, even applying it to my own life, it was really great. It just taught me how, well, we should be trying things. We should be moving from one thing to another as we feel passionate and inspired with, and as we go in life. It's not a bad thing. I think a lot of traditionally thinking career-wise, it's really hard to change your career or to jump from one career to another. But everything you do sometimes, as you start your journey, like the steps starts show up for you. I think that's a Romy code, but I probably butchered it. So I guess don't be afraid from the AI. And I know there's all this scare and fear now that AI is taking jobs, because it happened before and it happened with another technology came out, and that phase we'll settle at some point, and we'll be pivoting and moving to different roles. And but keep curious, keep being curious, keep trying things, keep breaking things, and enjoy that. Even if you can't do it at your job, just do it outside, and start a YouTube channel, use Lovable to build your new ideas, and just get feedback from friends and families. There's opportunities out there, and life has more to offer than just following specifically a step-by-step blueprint of a career that's probably not for you, if that makes sense.
It does. Amazing. Abdalla, this has been incredibly insightful, connective, infusing, especially for me, and I hope and I know it will be for our listeners as well. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, your vision, your experience, and everything with regards to your thoughts for the future of design with us. So, the non-traditional approach that can lead to success. What an incredible conversation. And if there's one key takeaway that we could take from Abdalla's journey, it's that our role as designers is expanding beyond the pixels. And that's no pun intended. Now, for every designer and leader watching, remember that your skills in empathy and human-centered problem solving are the foundation for shaping business and strategy, or even, as Abdalla mentioned, the future of AI. So your job isn't just to design interfaces anymore. See, it involves trust. It involves the overall experience. And trust is a feature you must design. So let's ensure that the future that we're building is one that understands and serves people. So go design and build with intention. Now that completes another episode of My New Experience, where we have experts like Abdalla, who's been amazing. We've just heard an amazing story from him. Outstanding and amazing successful guests will continue to join us in future episodes as well. So for more content like this, feel free to make sure you subscribe and hit that button so you don't miss another update. So remember, stay present. And Abdalla said it best, stay curious. I'll see you next time.